So Finance Minister Tito Mbowene's economic strategy paper aimed at boosting the economy is the subject of much debate. You just heard the opinions of COSATU right now. Mbowene published the paper on Treasury's website earlier this week, and the document is entitled Economic Transformation, Inclusive Growth and Competitiveness Towards an Economic Strategy for South Africa. It's caused much contestation on both the process used to release it as well as some of its contents. Now, in June, the ANC invited Statistician General Risenga Maluleke to present at its Lekgotla to guide government's implementation strategy. We've got the Statistician General with us to chat a bit about this, and he's in our Pretoria studios. So good to have you. Thank you so much, Statistician General, for being with us.
Morning, Leanne, and again, morning to the viewers.
Just a heads up to the viewers, we're going to literally ask the Statistician General one question, go to the news, and then of course continue this interview, because I know that there's a lot to discuss. So I'm not sure if you were listening to COSATU's reaction to this white paper that was released by the Finance Minister. If not, just in a nutshell, they're very unhappy with the process that was followed and feel that he is coming through and more worried about ratings agencies, and it almost feels like it was drafted by the IMF as opposed to going through NEDLAC and the usual path that we do here in South Africa. That's what she said in a nutshell. What is your view on this?
Firstly, as Statistics South Africa, we would always respect views of other stakeholders in relation to any policies that are made available or are made to the public by government. And the reason is because the role of Stats SA is to measure. And as we measure, we have to do so independently. So any views, we would always respect them, because otherwise we will start taking sides and lose the independence. But specifically, it's when there is any policy position out there in the public, one would certainly always want to see the kind of a dialogue that is there for purposes of tightening every bolts and nuts in relation to the final implementation of such a policy narrative. So coming back to Stats SA, whenever there's a policy or a discussion paper or a white paper out there, we don't readily respond to it because we have our program. If you look at our measurement of the economy in the form of the GDP, in relation to prices, our producer price indices and our consumer price indices, as well as our employment numbers in the form of labor market statistics, we continue to measure. And we always will measure and provide a light to the nation as a whole.
Right. I'm going to pause the interview just in the interest of news, and then we're going to pick up this conversation and delve a little bit more into it and pick your brain with regards to this. So let's quickly get into our news at 7 and update you on what's making headlines. Pretoria studios, the Statistician General of South Africa, Risenga Maluleke. We're talking to the white paper that was published this week, and it's of course something that the Finance Minister has been the subject of debate about. So the document is entitled Economic Transformation, Inclusive Growth and Competitiveness Towards an Economic Strategy for South Africa. So let's talk to it now and just continue our conversation. Yesterday, again, Statistician General, thank you very much. Yesterday, you had a press briefing on non-financial census of the municipalities. Give us a quick briefing on that, and then we'll go back into that conversation about the paper.
Firstly, we do release a whole host of products from Stats SA, and specifically of yesterday, in the non-financial census of municipalities, we have picked up that the free basic services are currently declining. Free basic water, free basic electricity, sewage and sanitation, as well as solid waste management. And we have also picked up that the number of indigents as registered by the municipalities has increased. And if you look at one of the things that this paper is raising, it would like to deal with matters of economic growth, faster growth, so that you could deal with challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. But back specifically into the number of indigents that were registered by the municipalities, when you look at the number of people who have gone out of the free basic services cohort and the increase in indigents, you can see that the message by the municipalities that the people must come out and register in larger numbers for access to such services, Leanne, does mean that it's not like people have fallen below the cracks. It's because people have responded accordingly to the call by the municipalities.
So let's get back to the paper now, and thanks for just giving us that issue with regard to municipalities. Now, with regard to this new economic policy paper, would you say this is a government strategy, or was it just put up for discussion? Because it again feels, as I mentioned to you a bit earlier, that this did not go through the correct channels, and many people saw it for the first time for different organizations, like I again bring up COSATU, at the same time that we, the public, saw that. So again, would you say that this is a government a strategy, or is it just a discussion point?
Leanne, we usually don't expect the Statistician General to worry themselves much about the nitty-gritties of any paper or any document in the public space as to whether it has come through the right channels or not. But the fact is, the paper is out there, and the public of South Africa has to engage with it. You have already indicated that COSATU has commented on it. And certainly, if you look at the area where we are, it has drawn a lot of the data that is already in the public space and lamented the state of unemployment in the country. And of course, for the Statistician General and anyone in official practice, any number, in whether the number is said to be high or low, we don't worry ourselves. We just have to make the numbers available. But one of the things that we reported in the first quarter of 2019 was the decline of exports. And if you look at the paper and you also look at global economies out there, which are kind of struggling, your measured developed economies are struggling, especially in the space of trade wars. We will have to ramp up as a country our exports for purposes of being absorbed by those developed nations as well. And largely that your absorption by the African markets haven't developed as much as the developed nations have done.
Yeah. So the document, for example, talks about a 3% economic growth. We've heard this before, many years. We've heard this all the time. We've been setting targets before, but instead we never necessarily reach them. We actually get negative results. What do we need to change in order to achieve this? What at the core of all of this needs to change?
Firstly, let us also make our reference to the National Development Plan, which has indicated that, and I'm going back to 2011, 2012, that we need 5% growth rate per annum to be able to create the requisite jobs that would sustain our society, and an economy that would be sufficient enough for dealing with the kind of challenges that we are facing as a country. So a 3% ask falls within the milieu of that matter that was raised by the NDP, of course being a lesser target. Now, one thing I can assure you, Leanne, and assure the public of South Africa is that we cannot project as Stats SA what we will need, because Stats SA doesn't do projections of what will happen to the economy. We have to go and measure. Of course, it's too early for this paper, but on Tuesday, on the 3rd, we will be making available our second quarter of the GDP. But in future quarters, even in future years, we will be making available quarterly numbers of the economy. And as we do so, the impact of and the progress that is being made by the NDP, as well as this paper that was released by the Minister of Finance, will be aired publicly to everyone to see how far we are going.
All right, finally, let's just get your opinions on this, because I'm reading, and I know that he's not the Statistician General anymore, but he did hold your position as the Statistician General, Paddy Lekgotla, and he was quoted this week as actually saying that, and I'll quote what he said that it failed to talk to the country's triple challenges of poverty, unemployment and inequality. He actually criticized the Treasury's documents to encourage growth. This is quite sort of telling from somebody who was in your position, and the same views and sentiments were echoed by Cosatu a bit earlier, saying that this is not speaking to your poor South African. What do you say about that? What is your reaction?
I don't have a personal reaction. Once I sit on this chair and I wear the hat of the Statistician General, I respond in my capacity as the position that I occupy. But in relation to sentiments of the former Statistician General, they were raised like any other individual would raise them out there in the public. And you wouldn't expect the current Statistician General to be drawn to discussions that were raised by any former in any public space. But certainly when it comes to matters of unemployment, inequality and poverty, we will continue to measure these dimensions of our society. And as you will remember that the current unemployment numbers are sitting at 29%, and we are yet to see, and we cannot predict, as that's a saying, we are yet to see when we come back with the next numbers in relation to the third quarter of 2019. But we also produce other figures. You will have seen the decline in the month of July on the prices side, the consumer price index, which has shown a decline. So those are kinds of things that when people that are in the space of the economy, be it the Reserve Bank, the Minister of Finance, and government in general, and members of society do look at. But certainly, other than our numbers alone, this paper adds to further discussions and other issues that our country needs to look at as we move forward to address unemployment, poverty and inequality.
All right, Statistician General, we respect your time. We thank you very, very much for coming in and giving us the views from the Statistician General of South Africa, Risenga Maluleke, commenting on the economic policy paper that was issued by National Treasury.